Since 2017, the Italian Wine Podcast has exploded, recently hitting 6 million listens. Support us by buying a copy of Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0 or making a small donation. In return, we'll give you the chance to nominate a guest and even win lunch with Stevie Kim and Professor Attilio Scienza. Find out more at italianwinepodcast.com. Chin chin!
Welcome to Masterclass US Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the US market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests at the end of each episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us each week to learn more about the US market. Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Danielle Callegari and Jeff Porter to the Italian Wine Podcast. They both joined the Wine Enthusiast tasting team for Italy last year. Danielle reviews wines from Tuscany and South, and Jeff reviews wines from Umbria and North. Thank you both for being on the show today. It's great to have you both here.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
This is the first time I have two people on the podcast with me, so it's very exciting.
We're really just one unit.
Well, it's great to have you both here. We're going to talk all things wine enthusiasts, about your roles, about Italian wine and the category at Wine Enthusiast specifically. But before we dive into today's discussion, let's just start with some general intros and tell us a little bit about your journeys and how you ended up being Italian wine critics with Wine Enthusiast. So Danielle, let's start with you.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I began my journey in the least obvious way, I think, for this kind of industry, which is with a PhD in medieval Italian literature. I took an academic route straight through and expected to work in a university, which I now do at Dartmouth College. I teach Italian literature, but I also studied food and beverage studies and got serious about wine along the way, and eventually got contacted by Wine Enthusiasts to take over some Italian regions. And I asked for the South because of my love of the South, and Tuscany because of my years spent living there in Florence. And here I am.
Amazing. Yeah, that is definitely a less expected route, but very interesting nonetheless. And Jeff, how about you?
I have a little more wine-centered route because I got involved in wine super early on in my life. When I was 19 years old, working at a restaurant as a dishwasher and then cook. And it blossomed from there. It was a big hobby of mine. And then as I got older and started working in wine retail, it just turned into something that was tangible and financially stable. And I became a sommelier and then traveled the United States, being a somm at different restaurants. And I got involved in a restaurant in Napa Valley called Trevinia, which was like, Cal Ital. And we had a strong, obviously, Napa Valley list, but also a strong Italian list. And that's when I really became in love with Italian wine. And I just felt so akin to it and kind of went from there and hopped around from restaurant to restaurant and then ended up here in New York and then running a restaurant called Del Posto and then just being so deep into Italian wine culture and history and passion. And it evolved into one day getting a call from Wine Enthusiast being like, hey, would you like to write about Northern Italy? And I was like, 100% absolute %. And here we are today.
Amazing. And I think you both bring really different backgrounds, right? That I imagine balance each other out quite nicely between the academic and then the restaurant, on premise. So it seems like it's a good mix. Am I right?
It's like the Doctor and the Beast, Danielle's the smart one and I'm just like the hammer.
As much as brute strength is required when it comes to wine tasting, I would say Jeff brings a lifetime of expertise that we would probably miss if you weren't around.
Absolutely. All right. So Danielle and Jeff, today we're going to talk about the process for scoring Italian wines at Wine Enthusiast and both of your experiences at the publication since you joined just about a year ago. So our three key takeaways for today's masterclass and what we're really excited to talk to you both about are, number one, the process of how wines are rated at Wine Enthusiast. I know that might sound basic, but for our listeners, we like to give real clear, tangible lessons from each episode. And I think it's a really important one. As we know, scores and ratings in the US are so critical. Number 2, trends in Italian wine among wine enthusiast readers. And number 3, how Wine Enthusiast is bringing the Italian wine category to life for US consumers. So let's dive right in. Wine Enthusiast is rating over 25,000 wines every year. Danielle, can you tell us how many of those wines rated are from Italy?
We would have to check the database to date, but I'm pretty sure that Jeff and I get through somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 bottles a year. So we represent the largest dedicated national area of wines that the magazine covers. Probably California and France are the other kind of comparable areas in terms of coverage. And I think we're both actually always adding more. So the number will only go up in the coming year.
Wow, that's incredible. And Jeff and Danielle as well, just walk us through a little bit the process of how those 2,500 wines plus are rated for Wine Enthusiasts by both of you.
So I think this is a good time because actually we're working on 2024 right now. So the editorial team sends us, hey, these are the stories we're looking to pursue. And then we create a calendar for 2024 that we then send out to the world and being like, hey, this is when we want to taste certain wines. And sometimes they align with editorial, and sometimes it's just we know that the wines are released at a certain date, and we want to make sure the readers get that access to information when the wines drop, so they can act before the wines get all gobbled up. And so then people send wines to the office, and then Danielle and I know nothing, because the one thing that I think separates Wine Enthusiasts from a lot of other review sites and print publications is we review blind. And for me, I call it a single blind versus a double blind, because we'll set up a tasting day and we have a whole team, and these are like the heroes, the unsung heroes of Wine Enthusiast is this crew of people that receive all this wine, put it in the database, catalog it all, and then we just, flow in like dilettantes. They line up the wines for us, and then we just sit down and we start tasting. And what they do is they organize it into flights that are like, so like this past week I've been tasting only Sagrantino di Montefalco, and so when I sit down, I know that it's Sagrantino di Montefalco, and I know it's from this vintage, and that's all I know. Okay. And then I write my notes, I do my scores, and then I'm told what the wines are, and I'm like, wow, that's really exciting. And sometimes there's like big surprises, big shockers, and that's the exciting thing of tasting it blind, because we take out certain prejudices. We have to know the grape because we want to score it on a kind of, in my head, I have a rubric and a pedological idea of what a certain varietal or region kind of has a range of. And that's, I think, where the subjectivity of the reviewer themselves comes into play, obviously. But the cool thing is, by having it blind, we really take out, that any preconceived notion, and which is exciting. Again, you get surprises, and the beauty of it is, as for me, for being in the wine business for over 20 years, is to see the evolution of producers that maybe 15 years ago I was like ho hum on, and then all of a sudden I taste these wines blind, and I'm like writing like an 800-word essay about the wine, which is only supposed to be 45 words, and giving it like 98 points and being super impressed. And then I call them and be like, hey, let's talk about what's the change. And that leads to editorial ideas that I then pitch to the magazine. So hopefully that was a decent enough answer.
No, that was great, and I think really helpful to understand the blind process. So all the wines are tasted at the Wine Enthusiast offices in New York and Westchester, just outside New York City, correct?
Correct.
You're never tasting anything on site with a producer, because I think that's sometimes a misconception, right? Like, oh, I want the critic to come here and taste my wine and score it, but are you ever scoring anything in Italy or with a producer?
We only score at the office. I can speak for myself, and I know Danielle does. We go visit the producers so we can know what they're doing. We talk to them. We create story ideas. Earlier in the year, I wrote kind of a vintage report and nothing was scored per se, but I give my impression, and that's kind of what we use from those interactions. But the hardcore scoring of it happens, in this chilly room that I have to, like, even the dead of summer, I'm wearing like it's a cellar temperature. I wear like a jumper or a sweater, and we taste the wines blind, and it's an exciting process.
Yeah, I bet. And it sounds like, you want to know the varietal for typicity and that part of it. But Danielle, talk to us a little bit about when you both started. Is there a way in which your palates are calibrated for the Wine Enthusiast rating system? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. As Jeff was mentioning, when it comes to our day-to-day tasting, we're tasting in categories. So you have to have some kind of parameters of expectations. And that's why you can have something that's maybe crafted in a very different way with a very different price point and market share in mind, that's scoring similarly to, something in a different lineup, because we're thinking about how it's performing according to expectation. Is it expressing that grape in the right way? Is it doing something exciting with the tools that it has at its disposal? And so that's what we're trying to align between ourselves all the time. Do we agree in terms of broad strokes that this is what we're looking for in this class of wines or this region right now or this style of production? And there are some ways that we do that you would expect. So we trade wines and taste and give our impressions to each other. We taste together in other settings, just drinking wine together and talking more about it. We keep each other updated on what we're both seeing when we're in Italy. As Jeff mentioned, he and I both visit Italy very, very frequently. I think both of us go, it seems like on average about once a month, if not more often. And we are on the ground talking to producers, talking to people in the industry, and just informing ourselves so that when we get to our wines, we're both working with a lot of context, even if we're facing the individual wines blindly.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Once a month to Italy doesn't sound too bad. I know, Jeff, you mentioned you're heading over there today, correct?
Today, correct.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm flying over, but this is exciting. It's purely vacation.
Oh,
This is
good.
my wife, daughter, and I. No, I mean, I still say I have 3 appointments set up.
Only
but
3.
That is a vacation. Normally, if I do like a week in a region, I'll do like 5 visits a day.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. It pushes it, but I love going to Italy.
Amazing. So. Well, vacation sounds great. The right time of year for it, of course. So, question for both of you. Ratings, scores. Been a lot of conversation in recent years. Like, what do these numbers mean for the younger consumer, especially, but for the American wine consumer? How much are scores used? How much do consumers care about scores? So, for both of you, what do you think wine scores mean for wine enthusiasts, and what do you think the wine enthusiast readers should take away from the numerical score, but also your review? And Danielle, let's start with you.
Well, I think scores are a shorthand, and it makes sense for the average consumer to have a point of reference that's legible and accessible. And so I like the fact that everybody can understand a score in that kind of immediate, abstract way. It functions in any context. We all know how to use that measure in. But I think that, and I have a feeling that Jeff would agree. For us, we see a lot of wines that maybe don't have as the highest scores that we can give out, but that are performing really well within class. And I think that the language in our reviews is something that both of us take a lot of care and time for, because we want people to understand that something that's an 88 might be an incredibly good wine at its price point, and that's a great value, and that is a great introduction to that wine that might then be an opportunity for someone to become familiar with that style, and then later on maybe invest a little bit more for a wine that would naturally be scoring higher, but that they can then appreciate and feel more confident about their purchase.
Okay. Jeff, how about you?
I mean, that's why we have a PhD on staff. I mean, that definition and explanation is perfect. I mean, that's exactly what it's for. And it's just like, I mean, I think people need to look at ratings, you know, kind of like how I look at, let's say, like restaurant reviews. You may see a 2-star, but they'll say, I mean, coming from the restaurant industry, they'll be like, oh, it's a 2-star review, but it reads like a 3-star, right?
Right.
And it's important to read the review, because let's say you're doing, I don't know, we'll take like Bulgari, for instance. And if a wine that retails for like $15 has like an 89 or an 88 in that category, that's an awesome bottle of wine, because you have to look at like the wine that's like 98 points of like a super high end wine that has a lot of pedigree. And I
Right.
think what I'm hoping readers get from it is that, we're also, since we do things in their class, like I recently did a bunch of Lambrusco, and I gave a few Lambruscos 96 points because they blew me away. And it's not apples to oranges. I'm not comparing Lambrusco to Barolo or Lambrusco to Amarone, Lambrusco to Lambrusco, right? So like within that category, these wines are the top of their class, and people need to kind of maybe associate like why we taste that way, because there's a difference between winemaking styles, varietals, obviously.
Yeah.
That's really important to distinguish.
And I think over the years, we've seen Italy become so much more regionalized, right? In the way that Americans are drinking. It's not just Chianti anymore. There's obviously so many regions that have emerged, and there's so much more need for education now to explain these various regions and wines to the consumer. So I like that approach that you're taking about, it's not about comparing within regions to one another, but rather really treating each region or category specifically and intentionally. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And Danielle, I agree with you. I think the cues of the scores are vital. I always talk about, like, I walk into Sephora and freak out because I don't know what to do. And that must feel like what a consumer might feel like going into a Total Wine. Like, it's just the number of choices can be overwhelming. And a score, a rating is an indicator, right, of quality, something that can help you decipher the thousands of options that are in front of you.
Wine to Wine Business Forum. Everything you need to get ahead in the world of wine. Supersize your business network. Share business ideas with the biggest voices in the industry. Join us in Verona on November 13 to 14, 2023. Tickets available now at winetowine.net.
So speaking of regions, it sounds like we have a little of that classic, north-south divide between your respective tasting beats, but would love to hear a little bit more from each of you about what you're really excited about these days from your respective beats. So Jeff, let's start with you. You're about to visit the north, and talk to us a little bit about what's exciting you there these days.
Oh man, I don't think we have enough time. I'll speak for Danielle on this, because we recently wrote an intro to the buying guide of the Italian wine issue about why Italy as a whole is one of the most interesting wine regions or wine countries in the world. And I always like to say it's the newest, oldest wine producing region in the world, because so much is happening. Every region is exciting. Every producer is pushing themselves. There's this renaissance I'm seeing across the board, across regions, that is making the most classic wines, take Chianti Classico, for example, or Valpolicella, or within Barolo, to be extremely exciting and interesting. And then you look at, I'm going to Val d'Osas, the last region in my journey through Italy. I've never been, and I'm going on this trip and going to try, a bunch of Prix Blanc, and Morges, and the Alpine wines. I don't know. I mean, everything is exciting. I think Italy is where it's at, and I think everybody should just be so excited, like I think Danielle and I are, for what's happening. And there's more stories to tell, and I think both of us are searching because it's happening again in the classic wine regions and these unsung regions that are just getting noticed today. But the interest from the consumer and the excitement that I'm seeing versus like even just 10 years ago, the youthful generation and the younger wine drinkers want story, want connection to a place, and want to feel, like an explorer. They want to discover. And so they're not afraid of grapes that are hard to say. Whereas like 10 years ago, for me trying to sell, a Falangina or Catagante was a challenge.
Right. That's super interesting. Well, that's exciting. You sound very excited, Jeff. So I can feel the enthusiasm through the headphones. And Danielle, how about you in the South? What's been super interesting or exciting for you recently?
Yeah, as Jeff said, I think I'd pick up one piece of what he was pointing to in particular for the South, which is that, and for Tuscany, which I have a little bit of an unbalanced sheet there because Tuscany, obviously, not competing in the same way as places like Molise or Pata, right? But I think the thing that maybe stands out to me the most is that areas that have long been appreciated are making changes to improve quality and to be more exciting and to deliver more quality and to make the most of their terroir and the expression of their grapes. And while also areas that have not been greatly appreciated are beginning to excel and to find traction and visibility. And so that means that, Jeff's enthusiasm is fueled by the fact that it isn't everywhere you turn. So I think most people who are passionate about wine, the thread that ties them together is that they love the infinite possibility for learning new things. Like there's no conquering all wine. You'll never know everything about it. That's impossible, right? And Italy, in Italian, there's a great term called a terra sterminata, which is a way of saying an infinite landscape that you can explore forever to come up with a new and exciting thing to see every single day. And that's what it feels like. It really does. The South is just so undiscovered yet that it's incredible that, the amount of time that I've dedicated doing graduate work and this, to this country and this culture. And I still, every single time I'm there, learn something that completely blindsides me. Not just that I didn't really know about, but that is truly stunning information to me. And it's just, it keeps you going. It gives you energy.
That's amazing. Can you mention anything specific or one of those recent discoveries that was so astonishing to you?
I would say on my recent trip to Sicily, I spent time in the dead center of the island at Regaliali, which is a big, well-known historic property. And I had actually already been there, but I still went driving around in a Jeep with Corrado and visited some of their farther reaching vineyards and harder to access pieces of land, and saw one particular memory I have is a space where the soil changes. Immediately next to each other is visible sand, like surface sand, against clay. And it was the hardest line in the middle of a vineyard that I've ever seen, of just complete transformation of the terroir. And it was something that just, changed the way that I thought about how a vineyard could perform.
Amazing. And, Jeff, question for you, just coming from the restaurant side of things, how do you think distribution and access to these wines is keeping up with the level of discovery that you're both so passionate about? I mean, there's so many great wines coming from smaller producers, lesser known regions. Do you think distribution in the United States is keeping up and bringing these wines to the market for consumers to find?
It's changed rapidly and fast, specifically post-COVID. There are more small importers popping up across the United States. I was recently in Nashville And, Nashville's a market that a lot of people, they know it's popular. It's become a place to like go and party and stuff. But the restaurant scene's taken off there, and they want the same wines that are found in New York City or San Francisco, and the importers are obliging. Like, I'm seeing really cool lists in places that you wouldn't think. Atlanta, Charleston, North Carolina, Denver, Minneapolis. And the consumer wants that. So, I mean, this is one thing I always talk about to producers themselves is don't just rely on New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Those aren't the only markets in the United States. And the consumers are diverse and spread out across the U.S. and want the wines, and people are starting to deliver on that. And that, I think that's, again, a boon for the consumer here in the U.S. is more these small itty bitty producers, and also larger producers who may have originally been with kind of legacy importers or legacy distributors are reanalyzing their strategy and working with their historic importers or producers, or making a change to kind of create a better better diffusion of their wine throughout the U.S. market, which I think is also important because, there's this big mass migration kind of all the time here in the States of people from different cities cross-pollinating and creating new restaurants and new retail stores. And I think it's just going to be so much better. And that helps us, I think, as wine enthusiasts, because we're seeking out wines across the spectrum, from itty bitty 1 hectare to 500 hectares, and showing the consumer what's available to them and why they should drink it.
That's exciting. And it sounds like as much as there is to explore in Italy, there's some exploration for these Italian producers to do when they come to the U.S. and finding these, itty bitty towns, maybe in Kansas or Oklahoma, or I don't know. The world between California and New York is vague for me, but I know there's a lot in between.
I mean, I think you're seeing some of the most interesting wine lists not in New York and not in LA and not in San Francisco. That's my hot take, is that there's really cool things happening throughout the country.
That's exciting.
That aren't in our current backyard. I mean, I think there's super cool things, obviously, in all these cities, but the price quality ratio specifically in like places like Texas or Charleston or Nashville is super high because the cost of doing business there is so much less.
Right. We might have to dive into this in another episode, Jeff. I'll follow up with you. So July was the Italy issue for Wine Enthusiasts. Danielle, talk to us a little bit about that issue, the overall approach, and some of the things that you and Jeff covered and wrote about for that issue.
Yeah, Jeff and I think we've already expressed, got a chance in this issue to just tell everyone the things that we've been telling you in the course of this podcast, which is that there is no limit to the amount of excitement and intrigue you can find in Italian wine right now. And the deals are just absolutely screaming still. Because at the end of the day, even the really high end and ultra conscientiously crafted wines are still coming in at price points that are more affordable than their peers in other regions. So we were really excited to have a platform to say all of that to our readers and to put that against the specific bottles that we've been scoring and show them, here are the wines that are doing exactly what we're saying, and please look out for them and enjoy them and take advantage while you still can.
And Jeff, how about for you? What was particularly exciting for you in this issue?
I had a piece, and I'm new to writing, right? Like Danielle has been writing for her entire professional career. And it's exciting to finally have this place versus a wine list where it's obscure, where you get to have some sort of influence in the direction of what people are drinking, but to really highlight something like Lambrusco that I love, and this idea of going back in time to this process called rifermentato, and seeing more producers and interviewing them and having this direct connection and these beautiful exchanges, and then condensing that all down into an article, I think it was so exciting, and to see it in print and see the pictures and what the editorial team does and how Lambrusco and, what we're writing about in general reaches the readers. It's just, it really, it's like a pinch me moment to see that finally, like after years of doing this, there's maybe someone that might listen.
Lots of people that might listen. I mean, all the Wine Enthusiast readers, of course. So yeah, I thought it was a great issue. I think it was a nice balance between a lot of the lifestyle and the pizza pairings and great recipes, but there's a whole feature story on Pré Blanc and diving into some maybe lesser known regions and wines and more in-depth stories was exciting to see. It was a great issue.
Absolutely.
So finally, we're coming to a close for today's episode. So we have to do our little rapid fire quiz where we will review the key takeaways from today's episode. So if you can both do your best to answer these questions in just a couple of sentences, that would be great. Jeff, we'll start with you. How do our listeners and producers get their wines rated by Wine Enthusiasts?
They send them to our office. We taste them blind, and then Danielle and I go ham and taste a lot of wine and spend a lot of time thinking and writing about the wines.
Danielle, are wines ever scored in person or with the producer at their wineries or estates?
No, we taste all of our wine blind on site at our offices in Valhalla, New York.
I think that's a really important one. That's why I asked that again, because I think there's some confusion there. So I wanted to hammer that point home. And finally, for both of you, one word to describe what is the most exciting thing to you right now in Italian wine.
One word for both of us? Oh my God.
I threw a curveball there. But
No, one word for either of us.
Each of you can pick a word. Jeff, we'll start with you.
Is pretty challenging. Danielle, you go first.
Neither one of us uses one word when 100 would do. One word in Italian wine, energy.
Oh, damn it.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, like when you said it, the word Italy came into my head.
Okay. That works. Perfect. I think it's one of those, just whatever pops in first. So love it. Energy and Italy together, they work perfectly, just like both of you as compliments and critics for Wine Enthusiasts. So thank you both so much for doing this with me today and being on the podcast. How can our listeners connect with each of you?
They can find me on Instagram at Dr. Callegari's Cabinet, and then on my Wine Enthusiast email address, dcallegari@wineenthusiast.net for information pertaining to our day-to-day tasting and other work at the office.
For me, it's on Instagram at Jeff Porter Wine, on TikTok at Jeff Porter Wine, and then for Wine Enthusiast, it's jporter@wineenthusiast.net.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.